I'm excited to continue with this series called Ready to Grow. And each week up until Easter, we're going to talk about kind of the essential building blocks of a healthy life of faith. This is the season that Christians call Lent, which is 40 days, not counting Sundays, between Ash Wednesday and Easter. And traditionally, people take this time to devote themselves to prayer and to other spiritual practices. And so today we're going to be talking about prayer. Next week we're going to be talking about wisdom. What is wisdom from God's perspective, and how is it something that we can get and benefit from? I'm looking forward to that conversation with you. But today, the conversation is about prayer. And if you have a high school student in District 11 that lives in your home, they just finished finals this past week. And so your home was probably one of the most active prayer centers in the world. For some, prayer is a confusing concept. So you're telling me that I just throw my words out into the universe and there's some kind of response that comes back? How does that even work? And don't even start talking about the kind of prayer where you expect to hear from God. You know what they say, when you talk to God, it's prayer, and when God talks back, it's schizophrenia, right? But of course, as Christians, we're not allowed to believe that. The Bible is full of examples of God speaking. And I don't think we're willing to say that the Hebrew slaves in Egypt should have had Moses committed when he told them God had commanded him to lead them to struggle for freedom. So prayer is a hard topic, is what I'm saying. It's complicated. It's not as simple as it might seem at first. For many, the mention of prayer brings with it the rush of guilt that we have about anything we know we should be doing more of, but we aren't. So prayer is the going to the gym of Christianity, right? I know it's important. It's important enough that I will definitely do it tomorrow. Prayer dredges up all kinds of anxiety. Even in my own home, a house with 4 pastors' kids, the only child who's willing to pray out loud is our 4-year-old son, Silas, who always remembers to thank God for how fast he can run and ends his prayer with, ta-da! Of course, I know how they feel, because I, too, was a pastor's kid growing up. And I was anxious about praying out loud. In fact, I can remember the very first time I prayed out loud. I was in high school. And Jenny and I had recently started dating. You don't even know this story. You were there. You don't know that this is a story. She arranged some kind of lunch with 2 of her friends from church, which I now realize was so they could give me the once-over. And Jenny could get approval to date me. And we met at Baker's Square. Do you remember this day?
No.
She doesn't remember this day, and it is seared in my memory. I can tell you what booth we sat in. So we all sat down over lunch, and we got acquainted and placed our orders, and I probably got pancakes, because that's what I do. And when the food arrived, Jenny's friend Stacy looked at me from across the table and said, "Cullen, would you say grace?"
Oh. Oh, no.
And so I took a deep breath, and I dove in, having never really prayed out loud before, but being generally familiar with the way these things work. I cobbled together a few words thanking God for the food and for the day, and ended with an amen, and I felt pretty good about it all. And when I opened my eyes, and I lifted my head, and feeling, I feel pretty solid about that first venture into uncharted territory of saying grace. And then Jenny's friend Stacy looks at me across the table and says, "You forgot to bless the food." So anyway, after I finished licking my wounds, I started taking steps in my faith that helped me get over some of those misconceptions and apprehensions I had about prayer. And I think that that's a step we all need to take. So today I'm going to talk through one of Jesus' parables. It's the only one about prayer, about how it works, and what our relationship to prayer ought to be, our relationship to God through prayer ought to be. Jesus tells this parable about prayer, and nothing about the shape of this story is what we would expect. For starters, the one making the request, the one with whom we are to identify, is a poor widow. Now remember, in Jesus' day, a widow has much more to grieve than just the loss of her husband. A woman without a husband in Jesus' day was cut out of society entirely. Completely separated from social structures. She couldn't work, she couldn't own land, she was destitute, without a means of survival, without hope. And then on the other side of this conversation, a judge who the Bible says never gave God a thought and cared nothing for people. Guy sounds like a peach. A quick reminder at this point, Jesus is telling this story. The Son of God is telling a story about how God works, and the character in the story that is standing in for God the Father is a complete jerk. On the surface, it really feels like Jesus has just failed at this analogy. But remember, Jesus is telling this story to his disciples, his closest friends, his most faithful followers and students. And so Jesus is with a safe audience, so he's going to push the boundaries of their expectations a little bit. So at first, this story seems just like a bad analogy. But let's think about this for a minute. If Jesus wanted to describe two people in his society who were as far away from one another as possible, it would be these two. The widow has no social standing at all. And so even though she's found her way before this judge, there's no reason why he would have to listen to her. Her rights don't matter to him. Her requests don't hold water for him. And so, for all of our expectations, she might as well not bother. And that's what Jesus' disciples would have heard. Like, a widow going before a judge, why bother? Because he has no reason to respond to her requests. And that's if he was a noble person. Right? That's if he's reasonable, or even just kind of generally decent by first century Jewish standards. But apparently this guy is the worst. For Jesus to say that he doesn't care about God, and he doesn't care about people, means that he is a self-centered, egomaniacal turd. Honestly. Like, the only response we would ever expect from his mouth upon seeing this widow approach him for justice would be, how dare you? How dare you stand before me? Think about who I am and who you are, and go home. You have no right to ask for my help. How dare you? That's the words we would expect from him. And that's probably what he said the first time, and the second time, and the third time that she came before him. If Jesus wanted to set up a scenario where there was a massive power differential, one person had all the power and the other had none, he found it. The widow is the closest thing there is to a non-person in Jesus' society. And the judge, though he has the power to help her, would have had no interest in doing so. There's no way he could personally benefit from granting her request. And he's only looking out for himself. And the gap that Jesus portrays between the widow and the judge is just the faintest shadow of the gap between us and God. We are small, fallible, temporary creatures. So how dare you, right? How dare you stand before an all-powerful God who gave us all we have and ever ask for more? How dare you? And yet in in Jesus' story, he invites us to imagine a scenario where even this jerk of a judge will cave in to this lowly widow's request. And if we can imagine a scenario where this judge will answer the cry of a helpless widow, perhaps we can imagine how God would hear our cries and respond with answered prayer. And what's the key ingredient? What does this widow bring to the table that is so persuasive and powerful for this judge? It's persistent faith. The story of the persistent widow teaches us that if we are weighed down by unanswered prayer, our only response can be persistent faith. We can't withdraw from God when the future is unclear. Instead, we press in all the more, because here's the crucial difference between this judge and our God. God loves to hear our requests. I don't know if you had a high school sweetheart, but if you did, there was probably a stage in your relationship when you would stay on the phone talking for hours and hours about absolutely nothing. Do you remember that stage? I mean, now you just text, right? So that you don't even need to, but there's something different about talking on the phone. I truly wish I could find a transcript of some of my high school phone conversations when Jenny and I had started dating. Because there's just no way that I, as a 17-year-old junior in high school, had 3 hours worth of anything interesting to contribute to a conversation about anything. There's just no way I was that fascinating. But of course, the truth is, you don't stay up half the night talking to your brand new sweetheart on the phone because they have something profound to say. Let's be honest. The last half hour of the conversation is pretty much comprised of nothing but, you hang up first. No, you hang up first. No, you hang up first. No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter much what we say or don't say. Because when you're crushing hard on someone, you're just in love with the sound of their voice. Right? Did you know that God is just plain in love with the sound of your voice? Far from being this cold, self-involved judge, God is more in love with you than you are. So making requests of God through prayer is not something that puts God off in any way. Now, does that mean that God is going to answer every single one of your prayers in exactly the way that you'd like? Of course not. God knows what we need better than we do. And so God will respond to all of our requests in the way that is best, not just the way that we want. And so, before I close today, I want to dispel 3 misconceptions that I think a lot of people have about prayer. And I want to challenge you to find a way to weave the kind of prayer that results from persistent faith into your everyday life. So 3 thoughts and then a challenge. So the first misconception about prayer that many people have is that prayer is boring. For many of us, the word prayer sounds like an invitation to just shut down. Like, depending on the faith tradition that you were brought up with, prayer might have seemed like this very perfunctory activity. Might seem like something that you have to do, but never something that you would want to do. But look at the story that Jesus tells. Is there anything boring about these 2 characters? Is there anything boring about the widow's cry for justice? No way. Prayer is our opportunity to put all that we are before God. All the things that you are most passionate about, all the things that you worry about, all the things that cause you joy or fear or sadness, the questions that are too big for your brain to contain, and the hopes that you cling to, that's what you bring to God in prayer. All of you. Prayer is just as boring or fascinating as we make it. And just like with so many things in life, you get out of it what you put into it. So, that's a common misconception that prayer is boring. It's just as easy to have a fascinating, intriguing prayer life if you put yourself into it. The second misconception is this, that prayer is for super saints. We have this impression that a life that is anchored by prayer is just for the holiest of people, right? Priests and pastors and monks and nuns, those people. Those are the people that do all the praying. But for the rest of us, life's just too busy to be overly concerned with hyper-spiritual mumbo-jumbo. We've got a real life to lead. But if that's your thinking, you actually have it backwards. The people we think of as spiritual haven't earned the right to be more prayerful because they're more spiritual. They are spiritual people because of their deep and abiding connection to God. And that was rooted and watered by prayer. Prayer is a natural part of being a follower of Jesus. Martin Luther, father of the Reformation and the Lutheran Church, said, "To be a Christian without prayer is no more possible than to be alive without breathing." That's how prayer fits in the life of a Christian, at such a fundamental, basic level as breath. You don't need to find a mountaintop or a cathedral to utter your prayers to God. They can happen in the rhythm of your humdrum life. Stuck in traffic? Pray for your enemies. Up late with the kids? Pray for peace. Don't wait for a crisis to pray. Make it a rhythm of your life right now, so that when a crisis comes and you turn to God, it's a conversation with an old friend, not a desperate plea to some unfamiliar judge. So, dispelling that misconception that prayer is for super saints. And finally, the final misconception I want to talk through briefly is that prayer won't change anything. Some people are under the impression that prayer is just wasted breath. I've seen more than one Facebook post from my friends who post something to the effect of, "I don't want your thoughts and prayers. Don't just do nothing and pretend it matters." And as much as I don't want to encourage that kind of cynicism, there's a big part of me that totally understands where they're coming from. See, if you're in a position to lend real help to someone, but all you do is post a sad face emoji and just write, "praying," then you haven't done all the things that a follower of Jesus does in response to someone's trouble. I sincerely believe that our prayers matter. God hears them and responds. Prayers get answered every day. But if you have the power to be the answer to prayer, and if you ignore the tugging of the Holy Spirit on your heart when you hear it's time to unfold your hands and open your eyes and get to work, then you weren't praying to the same God as me. Because my God demands action. And this brings me to the challenge for today. It's one challenge in two parts, so I'm going to get you both ways here. First, I want you to think of something you do every day and turn it into a time of prayer. Make your daily ritual a holy ritual. So maybe it's your commute to work. If you're going to pray in the car, just don't close your eyes. Maybe it's when you're brushing your teeth. Maybe it's during that first cup of coffee. Find something that's already a ritual in your life and make it into a holy ritual by meeting with God while you're there. So try that. Start there. Because it can be really hard to integrate prayer into your already busy life. So just baptize something that you do anyway. So make your daily ritual a holy ritual. And then second, I want you to find a way that you can be someone's answer to prayer. just like I mentioned. Keep your eyes and ears open for the ways that you can respond to someone's need. Show up with unexpected help. Give a word of encouragement. Intervene in a difficult situation. And here's a tip. If you use your new prayer ritual to ask God for ways you can be an answered prayer, God will absolutely come through. I read once the most dangerous prayer in the world is use me, because God will not turn that one down. And then, by answering someone else's prayer, yours will have been answered too. Bam. Twofer. I read a quote this week from a pastor and evangelist from the turn of the 20th century. His name was F.B. Meyer. He said, "The greatest tragedy of life is not unanswered prayer, but unoffered prayer." The greatest tragedy of life is not unanswered prayer, but unoffered prayer. May this week be the start of a lifetime of tragedies undone, of prayers answered, and of meeting with the God who is in love with the sound of your voice. Pray with me. God, we turn to you today like we have so many other times. And though we can't see you with our eyes, we trust with persistent faith that you hear us when we pray. And so we ask God, turn our hearts ever more toward you. Help us to lift our voices to you with our requests, with our fears, with our doubts, with our loves and our joys, with everything. Help us to draw close to you like a friend, so that we can know how deep and how wide